we're going to be talking about the similarities and some of the things that we can take away as teachers from business owners. Just decide to make an upgrade. So for the last 7 years or so, I fell in love with entrepreneurship. I love the idea of small businesses. I love the idea of starting something on your own and going out in the world and making an impact and a difference and making your own dollar. I remember 2015. I was sitting in the the teacher's lounge or whatever of the last school I was ever going to work at. I was reading a book that I just kind of picked up, and it was called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And if you entrepreneur folks out there know of that book, you know kind of that is the staple. And one of the things that a lot of times make people realize that, oh, it's possible, and here's all the ways we can do it, and here's all the other things that we can do. But I read that book and I said, whoa, like I never even knew this was possible. I put myself in so many boxes. I took that and ran with it. In the last 7 years, I've been doing a lot of different type of entrepreneurial endeavors. With all of this experience with running businesses, marketing, digital marketing, working for other digital marketing companies, operations, even budgeting, I've learned quite a bit. And I said to myself, this is really interesting because there are so many similarities between teaching and running a business. And for the teacher's sake, there is so many things that we can take away from a business owner. There are 3 major things that I think is really, really important for a teacher to look at a small business and say, what can I kind of take away from? So the first thing is delegation. Now, I actually am in the middle of reading The E-Myth Revisited. And this is a book by Michael Gerber. And this is Gerber? I think it's Gerber. This is another staple in the entrepreneur land and the business owner land. And I'm about a quarter of the way through, and I've kind of get the gist of where we're going. And ultimately, the idea is that there are 3 different hats. There's 3 different major hats that a business owner wears, and that is the technician, the person who's actually, the doing the thing, right? If it's a plumber, the person who's actually plumbing. If it's a carpenter, the person who's actually, building. Then there's the manager, so the daily operations, the P&Ls, the budgeting, all that. And then there is the entrepreneur. So that's the person with the vision. That's the person that kind of drives the business forward. That's the person who's always creating new tasks and new things, for the other 2 to kind of work on. And the idea is that most of the time technicians kind of get in their own way, and they get a little, they're too focused on just that one part, and they don't even realize half the time that there's other parts of their business that needs to be worked not only in, but worked on. When it comes to delegation, I think it is super, super important to delegate tasks to your students, because if you really think about how much you have to do physically for this job, it's a lot. And if you assign roles to your students, and if you think about them as your employees, then your employees are just not going to be sitting there and just like waiting for a call to come in to go, fix somebody's sink. They're going to be doing other things, and they're going to have a list of different things that they have to do in order to get paid. When you think about your students, you obviously, unfortunately, are not paying them. It might make it a little easier, but in elementary, this works really, really well because you're with them pretty much for 6 hours straight. And if you don't delegate and you don't assign tasks, you're going to go insane. But even in the secondary level, I think there are certain things that can be delegated, and there are certain things that can be expected. When you really think about what the role of a student is, their role is to not just learn the material. It can be, it's up to you, but the role should be you learn the material while conducting yourself in a professional and positive manner. And along with a professional positive manner comes a whole bunch of other things, right? Like, how do we enter and exit the room? When I ask for something like, please stop talking, why do I have to ask 3 times? We're not, right? It's going to be the first time, and yada, yada, right? And that's obviously classroom management. That's from day one. That's the culture that you build in your classroom and ultimately your energy that you're feeding into this. But when you think about it from a role, right? What is the role of a student? The role is not just to learn. The role is to conduct themselves in a positive and professional manner. That's just something, that's me randomly spitting that out. But I think can be something that really, that might help you when it comes to actually delegating certain things within your classroom. And then it kind of goes into the second point of this is systems. When a business has even if a business like mine, right, being a youth speaker is not just something that I do, it's a whole business, and there's different parts. There's marketing, there's definitely operations, there is the technical side, or the actual, for lack of a better word, the performance and the gigs itself. There's budgeting, there's all these different things, and I have them bucketed into certain things. And my systems are simply right now, since I'm a solopreneur, like, what is my schedule? And when do I do what, right? So when am I actually working on my content marketing, doing this? When am I working on my traditional advertising, my digital advertising? When am I working on my contracts for schools? When am I working on outreach, whatever? And how do I exactly, the system behind how do I actually do that so that I can replicate that and say if I hired somebody, right? Definitely one day we'll be hiring, somebody in some facet, and I need to be able to say, for lack of a better word, a turnkey type of situation where they come in and, after a little bit of training and kind of overseeing what they're doing, they should be able to follow almost a script and follow a task list, and something that says, okay, I do this and I do this. This is how I do that. And then when I'm done with this, I do that. If you think about McDonald's are not, they're not just flying by the seat of their pants. Have you ever watched The Founder? A great movie. Ray Kroc, I think his name is, the guy who took the McDonald's and actually made the franchise model. And if you watch that movie, he's blown away. The first time he walks into the two brothers McDonald's, he's like, oh my gosh, look at this. Because they have a whole system. And these high school kids are just ripping through, and they're just like moving around trays, and they're able to produce so much product, and at such a somewhat decent quality, at such a breakneck speed, that he said, wow, they're not selling burgers. They're selling the system, and they're selling the fact that when you go to a McDonald's, if you see a long line, you'll be in and out fairly quickly. You'll get the exact same product every time, and you'll be able to have the same exact experience every single time. So that is a system. For a teacher, how do we create systems? Now, I kind of alluded to this when I talked about delegation, right? Like, how do we enter and exit the room, I think, is a huge system, especially for secondary teachers. If a kid comes off of lunch and is all hyped up and just excited and comes bursting in the room, yelling and screaming, what's up? It's just like, it's not how we do it. It's just not how we do it. And part of that, obviously, is setting a tone and setting your culture of the room, as I just said before, based on how you act. And a lot of times it's hard because, we may be having to put that teacher hat on, and sometimes that teacher hat falls off and we just kind of become ourselves. And maybe we're a little antsy and a little excited, and they pick up on that, and they know that's your real self, and that's okay to be your real self. But again, there's system. If you are asking students to raise their hand before they speak, or, ask to raise their hand before they go to the bathroom or something, but they kind of don't do it, and then after a couple of weeks in the beginning of the year, then they never do it, that's not a system. That's a want. That's something that you'd wish happened. But a system is something that happens every time, no matter what. And you might be saying to myself, that's nice, Kevin, but welcome to the real world. I will tell you, while it is very difficult, and I have empathy for you, it is possible. And see, I come from the music world where, it's not unlikely to have 60 to 80 high school students, or any age for that matter, armed with noisemakers. And you are supposed to get them all to play the same notes together. It's like a miracle. It's not, but it's a system. Again, how do they enter the room? How do they take the instrument out of the case? When do they take the instrument out of the case? How long do they have to warm up? When do we actually begin the lesson? Because again, with band and orchestra programs, you have to have about 3 or 4 minutes in the beginning of the period let them come in, take out their instruments. Oh, I gotta clean my mouthpiece. I gotta get a new reed, and I gotta warm up a second. Okay, so that takes at least 3 to 4 minutes. But again, do we stretch that to 5 or 6? Do we stretch that to 7 or 8? Or does it every single time happen at 10:36 on the clock when that second hand goes, my hands are up and we're starting our warm up together, right? Something like that. Again, that is a system, and that takes, I have empathy, that takes an extreme amount of discipline and commitment and consistency on your part as a teacher. So, and it's not going to be perfect every single time, but especially in the beginning of the year, first couple of months, that is the tone you set. And of course, the consequences if, said system is not put in place. That's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. So finally, let's move on to the third and final connection point from a business owner to a teacher. And this is how we reverse engineer the entire education experience. When a person goes into business, they usually, if they're a good business owner, they go in with yearly goals, 5-year goals, sometimes even 10-year goals, which is very silly. But that's a lot of times if you download a business plan, you'll see that 10-year goal, forecasting. I understand the point of it, but we always have some type of yearly goals, not even just financial goals, but we have goals in, okay, how many clients will I have by the end of the year? What's my top line revenue going to be? Of course. How many employees do I see bringing on within the next 2 years? How many offices do I have to expand to? Right, whatever it may be. We have these visions and we have these goals. And then what we do is we reverse engineer that. Okay, so if I need, for instance, if I need to make a certain number of dollars for my income as a youth speaker, I have to simply reverse engineer how much I charge per event and then how many events I need to do within that year. It's really that simple. But as a teacher, reverse engineering your classroom, I think, is crucial. And a really easy way to do that is just look at the end of the year, right? Look at the end of the year and see what we want to have happen. Clearly, we have to have the curriculum taught. And of course, we have to abide by the state standards of whatever state we're in. And that's tricky, I understand, because there's a lot of non-teaching that goes into pass those state tests. So that's part of it, right? But then what else? What else do we want our students to know and take away with? And this may not be the actual curriculum. This may be simply a phrase. We talk about, obviously, we're really invested here in like SEL and social and emotional learning. So maybe it's simply a phrase like the choices we have dictate the decisions that we make. And maybe that's something that you say every single day when they walk in. Again, another system that you incorporate. And maybe that thing they take away with and they recognize, Mr. McKella, the choices we have, make the decision we make, right? And it's kind of like this silly thing, but they connect you with that and it's like almost branded into their head. But you know what? That kind of stuff works because all of a sudden when they're about to get into a car, when the driver's been drinking and they know that they have the choice in front of them, they get to make the decision and the decision is up to them. Maybe because you said that every single day and they have that moment and it's literally just completely burned into their subconscious, maybe they do make the right decision. So maybe that's a goal that you want to have achieved. But again, you have to reverse engineer that. So literally an easy exercise is taking a piece of paper and just writing down the ideal student at the end of the year with that comes away from you, right? What is it that they know? What is it that they believe in? How is it that they act? And how do they feel as human beings? So these are 3 things I think are really important for teachers to look at business owners and look at the way a business is done without the confines of dealing with brains that are not fully developed yet, people that you are not paying, and things that you need to make them know. So again, I completely don't envy you. It's an incredibly difficult job, and we thank you so much for doing the job. But like I said, I think the best way that you can start out 2023 is reverse engineering even the next 6 months in front of you. I think that's a huge way. Develop systems and make sure you're delegating to your students. Don't look at them as just kids that you have to deal with. Look at them as interns. So with that being said, I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. I know I did. So please subscribe to the show. If you really liked it, please share it with another teacher. And if you really, really liked it, please leave a rating and review. That will help me tremendously become a better host and a better presenter. But more importantly, it'll help more people find the show as well. So thank you once again, and I will see you next week in the first episode of 2023 on the Upgrade My Classroom podcast.